So most of us sort of think we're just going about our life, don't we? That we're going to work, going home. It's all pretty much straightforward. Things go well, things go badly. It's pretty much how it is. What we don't realise, and what's really important to realise, is we're living on the basis of a myth. By myth, I don't mean a Greek myth. I don't mean Star Wars. I don't mean a sort of charming story that is a bit inconsequential. By myth, I mean a sense-making pattern that we're living out, a kind of narrative, an underlying narrative that makes sense of what happens to us. So, for instance, we have a massive underlying narrative that when I die, consciousness is destroyed, yeah? That everything about me, my memories, my desires, my hopes, my wishes, all of that's destroyed at death, yeah? That's actually not a fact. It's not something that anyone knows. It's a myth that we're all enthralled to and live out. So if you have that myth, the obvious thing is either to party till you drop or to optimize your life, to every time the sun shines, go out and stick your tongue out to get whatever it is, vitamin D, do 5 press-ups, then have your hot coffee, and then do this. One of the myths we're living at is to optimize our life, squeezing in more and more good things into every moment, because this life is all we've got. So we have to make the very best of this life now. Sounds quite sensible, and it is up to a point, but it creates a kind of horrible sense of stress and tension. And it's not true. It's a myth. It's a myth that you've taken up. A more obvious myth is, if I get a promotion and I get a swanky office and I get much more money, I'll be really pleased about that. I'm only pleased about that, though, if getting more money and having a big office is a myth that I've got, that gives my life value and meaning. If you didn't think that money accumulation and status gave life meaning and value, what would be the meaning of a promotion? You wouldn't know how to feel about it. How you feel about things, how you understand things, are all based not on your direct experience, but on the myth that you're living through. So if I beat you in a competition and I get really pleased with myself, it's to do with a myth that makes that meaningful for me. So one of the things we need to do is realize that we're living through a myth. We're enthralled to a myth. And myths can be helpful, unhelpful, really destructive, both personally or globally, or they can help us flourish and grow. So when you come to Buddhism, you're coming to a myth, just as you are when you come to Islam, just as you are when you come to Christianity, just as you are when you come to secular life. Secular life itself is a myth. The idea that we can live scientifically by science alone is a myth. Science isn't designed to answer those sorts of questions, yeah? So similarly, when you come to Buddhism, you're coming to a myth. You take up a myth in order to go from myths that hurt you and constrict you and limit you to myths that deepen your perception of yourself and other people, that strengthen your sense of your agency in the world, that give you a deeper, direct experience of meaning. That's what Buddhist myths are about. Now, Buddhahood itself, the goal of Buddhism, full and perfect enlightenment, like the figure behind me that symbolizes, is actually beyond myth, including beyond Buddhist myths. But to move towards the Buddha, to surrender to him, to discover him in your own experience, or to allow him to emerge, you need to take up a certain kind of myth. And you need to realize that myth, whatever myth you take up, whether you believe you want to develop yourself toward being a Buddha, or to surrender to him, or discover him, or let him emerge, whichever myth you take up, it's got what we could call a front and a back. So if you imagine you look at a mountain range. I just recently come back from at least having a view of the Himalayas. I can't say I was on the Himalayas, but I had a view of them. A fantastic classic vision of all these snow peaks. And you look at them and you think, all those mountains. So when you think that, you're looking at the peaks of the mountains. But you could say, look at all those valleys. If there are mountains, there must, by definition, be valleys. And that's what myths are. They're a certain way of configuring your experience in order for you to make sense of your experience, in order for you to know how to live, in order for you to answer those questions like, what kind of life is worth living? What's important? Who am I? What's a good life? What's not a good life? What's worth me doing? What's not worth me doing? As soon as you ask those questions, and humanity, being human, is based on those questions, you're taking up a myth. And a myth has, as I said, a front and a back. The mountains, in other words, the elements of the myth that are valuable, that give you something, that give you a sense of meaning and value, but also the valleys, which are that myth taken literally or superficially. So every myth we take up has got that sort of shape. It's got a front, as I would say, and a back. You need to take up a myth. There's no such thing as having no myth. The idea of living in the moment is a myth. The idea of living scientifically on the basis of science alone is a myth. The postmodern idea that there are no myths is a myth. You cannot get away from the question of, and even the problem of, myth. And all myths have a front and a back. They're partial ways of talking about reality that goes beyond myth. So what Buddhism is a taking up of a myth in order to make progress towards, to surrender to discover or allow the Buddha to emerge. That emergence, that what you discover, is beyond myth. It's actually the source of meaning and value. What human beings need now, more than ever, in this world where we're talking more and more in terms of a meta-crisis or a poly-crisis, this sense of solving a crisis over here is just making a crisis over there even worse. You see, that's our contemporary situation. Underneath all that is that we've lost a source of value and meaning. We've lost a meaningful myth. Many people can no longer believe in God, for instance. I've never been able to believe in God. But the secular world doesn't work either. The myth of the secular life, the myth of a scientific life, a rational life, clearly hasn't worked either. Just look around at the world just now. We need to find a new source of meaning, and we need to find a new myth, or even a new myths, even a new understanding of myth. And that new understanding of myth needs to start from really realizing that my own life just now, at this very moment, whilst you're watching me talk to you on this video, is being made sense of by a myth. The very fact that you're watching this, not watching something about, fashion or celebrities, is because you're groping towards a myth that is actually adequate to your humanity, that is actually going to help you flourish and discover value and meaning. So that's what Buddhism offers you. It offers you 4 myths to move towards Buddhahood, but it keeps on saying, but you have to be careful with that. You have to be clear that each myth has a front and a back. However right you think you are in your myth, however much you feel like you have got the truth, that truth has got a back that will also be affecting you and affecting others. So we need to learn a much more sophisticated way of understanding the myths that we've already enthralled to. We need to take up Buddhist myths, which move us towards a transcendental vision of life, which is beyond the secular world on one hand, but beyond God on another. From a Buddhist point of view, the Buddha is the source of meaning, and you kind of feel that somewhere. You feel a lack of something somewhere. And you might not be able to say, and that I'm going to be solving that with God, but you might not be able to say you can just solve that with a promotion. There's something deeper going on. There's something more important going on. And I believe that Buddhism is the most effective way of talking about that without falling into these dangers of reifying a God on one hand or reifying the secular life on another. Finds a really useful way of talking so that we can actually discover meaning and value, whilst remembering we need to eventually transcend all myths, all stories, all views whatsoever. The Buddha was supposed to have no view. It doesn't mean that he didn't think, it just meant he didn't need to have a pre-cooked idea about who he was and what the world was. So Buddhism is a taking up of a myth, and that your life now is already a taking up of myth. And depending on what myth you're taking up right now, that you think that the only way of getting meaning is having lots of money, or to be famous, or to be beautiful, or to move towards a transcendental goal like Buddhahood, the myth that you're taking up right now will either thwart your life, or flatten and narrow your life, or it will give you endless opportunities to open up and discover more to life. That's really what Buddhism wants to offer you, endless opportunities to discover more to life. So I hope you found that video helpful. If you did find it helpful, as they say on videos, hit the like button. I have never said that in my life. Subscribe, hit the subscribe button. I don't know. Great to do that. More importantly, come along to the London Buddhist Centre and actually meet me and meet us and take part in a Buddhist community. If you're not living in London, we have all kinds of events online, and also we have our own purpose-built retreat centre, so you can always come to one of our retreats. But come and actually join us, not just online. Wonderful though it is, come and actually join us in person. That's the way that we're going to really change ourselves. So I hope you'll come and join us.